Hey everyone, thanks for joining us today. We're going to have Brennan Stewart speak some about the value of a chartered business valuator and looking at your practice sale. You know, as you see from our website, you'll notice that we have the ability to do what we call an estimate of value. An estimate of value is a very basic approach to understanding value at a high level. It doesn't hone into any great detail, but gives doctors the ability to understand, a ballpark of what their practice value may be in today's market. You know, there's places where that makes sense, but there's a lot more places where having a chartered business valuator do an evaluation makes a lot more sense. So I'll pass it over to Brennan of Bonfire Capital. Brennan will do a little introduction of himself and then tell us about why a CBV is great. And Brennan, I'm going to go off camera, so screen will be all yours.
Okay. Thanks, Mike. Appreciate you having us on here today. I commonly get a question, what is a CBV? And so the answer to that is CBVs are business valuation professionals that are accredited by the CBV Institute, whose training and standards are so high there are less than 2,300 of them in all of the world. That compares to over 210,000 CAs or CPAs in Canada alone. So most CBVs are actually CPAs who pursue the CBV designation to provide highly specialized expertise across valuation approaches for just about any industry. Most CBVs will typically be working at a large accounting firm or in private industry for industry consolidators or private asset managers. We're a little bit unique, our firm, in that we're a independent firm working, servicing the same sort of clients as the large accounting firms, but a independent boutique option. So I also get the question about why should I retain a CBV? And the reason for that is pretty simple. Only a CBV can actually issue a formal valuation report in Canada. The reports that CBVs issue vary with the level of assurance provided, the extent of analytical review completed, and the disclosure that's actually included in the formal report. As well, a fundamental requirement of these CBV valuation reports is the valuator must expressly state their independence. Being independent enhances the quality of the valuation report and eliminates any conflict of interest that may affect the report conclusion. So a good example of this is, in these circumstances, you'd like to have an independent viewpoint on the market, unimpeded by any conflicts of interest that might, exist outside of working with a CBV. So I'll speak a little bit more to the types of reports that are available. The highest level of assurance available is called a comprehensive valuation report. These reports tend to be reserved for litigation purposes and to be admitted into as evidence in court, typically not commonly seen in an M&A context. The lowest level of assurance available in a calculation of value report is the calculation of value report itself. The disclosure in these reports is minimal, and the corroboration of the facts provided by the business is also less than what you would see in the other two reports. In concept, it's quite similar to a notice to reader or a compilation of financial statements. In between these two, the comprehensive and the calculation, is the estimate of value report. And this report is based on a more limited review than in a comprehensive. There's also less analysis and corroboration of the relevant information in the report itself as compared to the comprehensive. Typically, for example, in a tax reorganization concept, both of a calculation of value report and an estimate of value report would be considered suitable for purposes of the CRA. The next question I get is whether you should seek a valuation report, and really it depends on your specific situation. an independent valuation report can be an excellent tool in establishing your walkaway point in the context of a sale, because the valuation has been independently assessed by a CBV. In general, most of the time, in the context of a potential sale, valuation reports will be used for internal use only. So they're typically not used as a selling document for the process, although they could be under certain considerations. That being said, all of the financial content and certain disclosures about the business can serve as the base for a selling document, referred to commonly as a SIM, that would be provided to prospective buyers in a sales process. In addition to the formal reports, CBVs commonly work outside of a formal context. A common work product that we see and that we do for our clients is known as a pricing analysis. And then they can be based on the same level of analytical review as in an estimate or a calculation of value report, except with less narrative disclosure. You don't get the glossy report. You get financial schedule deliverable that includes the ultimate valuation calculations, and the deliverable itself would be marked as not a formal CBV report. But the crux of it is the analysis was typically going to be at the same level. So a pricing analysis can be a really good option where the circumstances do not warrant the incremental costs associated with a formal report. But what you get with a report is a document that has been performed independently, and it's quite thorough in form and content, and will properly allow you to understand the nuances of the valuation calculation. So at the end of the day, it's ultimately a case-by-case decision whether to choose a formal valuation report or a pricing analysis, both performed by a CBV. And another thing to think about in terms of, should I retain a CBV to assist me with my valuation needs, or should I consider a business appraiser that might be operating in the market? These business appraisals typically are referenced to industry rules of thumb based on a discount rate or a multiple of earnings. And this is typically a bit of a shortcut approach, and can lead to potentially substantial differences in the valuation conclusion and your own expectations. So a valuation analysis by a CBV takes a far more rigorous cash flow-based valuation approach, which considers the individual nuances of the subject business and is more thorough and supportable. So if you think in the context of working with an M&A advisor, if you've also retained the services of a CBV, you're likely to have laid out clearly what are the inputs to the valuation math, and this can be kind of used to handle negotiations, because you can know about what the individual subjective analysis may be. And so the benefit of the rigor that you get from a CBV is you really just do have a firmer grasp on the inputs to the valuation math, and an understandable buildup from after-tax free cash flow, plus the inputs for the capitalization rate of these maintainable cash flows. Mike, that's the end of my prepared remarks.
That's awesome. So Brennan, when you think about a doctor and why they would use a CBV over a typical business valuator, or I guess, I don't know if we call the business valuator, business appraisals, like some of the brokerages out there, why would someone want to use a CBV over one of these brokers that are doing the evaluations in-house?
Well, that's a great question, Mike. So When I think about kind of why you would have a valuation report done by a CBV, it really comes down to the quality of the work product that you're going to get. And typically in an M&A scenario, there's kind of the classic standoff between a buyer and seller as to who's going to show their cards first in terms of anchoring with a price. And so if you've gone through the exercise to complete a valuation report, uh, in effect, what you have done is carefully assessed each of the individual inputs to the valuation. And so when you go into a negotiation process, you have a more comprehensive understanding of what variables are going to affect the valuation math. Typically, the buyers of any healthcare practice are fairly sophisticated, and it's not the first time that they've done this before. So they are, going to be generally operating at a kind of comprehension level from a finance and valuation perspective that might exceed your own. So going through this valuation, process can get you up to speed, up to their level and ready to negotiate on the specific inputs that affect the valuation, as opposed to having a more emotional based negotiation where your position is based on emotion as opposed to the ultimate objective math involved.
And so at Bonfire, I think it's probably safe to say that you've had considerable experience working with private equity backed consolidators and are able to help these doctors understand and be on a good footing when they're working with a heavily sophisticated buyer.
Yeah, that's right. So, by way of, additional background, I come from a Big Four accounting firm environment. I was with Ernst and Young for 12 years in their corporate finance practice. And we were doing, generally larger, transactions, exclusively dealing with sophisticated counterparties. So typically not, operator transactions, typically large private equity firms investing into Canadian companies or trade buyers from the US. Think of a Scott's Miracle-Gro, for example, investing into an operating business here. So that's one of the benefits of working with a firm like ours is we not only have interacted across the other side of the table from these sophisticated buyers, but we also service them ourselves. So of course, EY had a large private equity practice, and private equity tends to be the biggest kind of contributor to activity levels at our firm, working with them to either buy or divest assets that they've decided to move on from.
Awesome. Well, I think that's great, Brennan. I think that gives the doctors a good understanding of the differences and some of the value that can be created by using a CBV. When it comes to cost, do you say doing a CBV valuation is probably similar in cost to using one of these brokers' appraisal departments?
You know what? I generally would think we would be on par. There tends to be a little bit of an incremental cost associated with production of the report itself in accordance with the CBV standards, which are quite high because the standards are set in order to provide the recipients or the readers of the reports with adequate information to properly understand the calculation of value, as compared to a business appraisal, which is typically, from my experience, a hybrid between a valuation report and a sim. So it's, a lot of content kind of, about the business, and kind of less content as to why we arrived at one value versus another. So from a cost perspective, you may expect, a little bit, more expensive for the report option, depending on which level of assurance you select. And in situations where a report itself is not needed, but the valuation conclusion is, and under those circumstances, we can work under a pricing analysis, which is deliverable, which is a deliverable recognized by the CBV Institute, but not intended to be a report itself. So costs can be kind of saved by not going the report option. The upside of this compared to the business appraisal is that you're going to get a more sophisticated assessment of value, understand the inputs, as opposed to a blanket kind of this is the discount rate sort of thing.
I'd encourage anyone that's considering a process with a brokerage appraisal, as we'll call them, versus a CBV, to explore both processes and understand both costs, because I think you'll find that the cost difference is not significant, but the value of the product received will be. And thanks, Brennan, for getting on. It was great to have you chat through this. I think it's a valuable topic that's really not happening in doctor spaces right now. It's be good to see more CBV valuations coming across for doctors so they can have a better tool in their toolbox to be able to get the best value out of their practices should they choose to sell them or transition wealth to another family member or anything like that.
Absolutely. It was great to be here with you today, Mike, and very interested in supporting the healthcare professional community and realizing their objectives. And I think, at the end of the day, liquidity in the context of a professional practice or not any, operating business is more complicated, than it sounds. And the best thing that you can do is over prepare, and it's arguably not possible to over prepare. So best wishes to you and your clients, and look forward to spending some time with you again.